This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.
A practical prayer is a prayer that works.
These discussions between Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence dive into the details of how it works and how to work it.
Reverend Bill is a New Thought minister and the author of Practical Prayer for Real Results.
Your new life begins with a new thought.
Carol Lawrence is on a spiritual quest, finding the New Thought teaching after decades on the pulpit in 3 different traditional denominations.
I've got some questions.
Together, they're exploring the philosophy and activities that come together from many of the world's religions to create the practical spirituality that is New Thought.
Welcome to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Miller. Listen to that. Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni.
I know him.
Yeah.
And we've got another episode of the Practical Prayer Podcast, and you are quoting and bringing up a question posed by the Buddha.
Yes.
For today.
Well, actually, the Buddha had it down pat, right? He didn't have a question. I'm the one.
Okay.
I'm the one with the question.
We'll organize that. I heard in the open that you've got some questions.
Yeah. So, do you want me to give you the quote again? So, yeah.
Sure.
So here's the quote. And it is not necessarily Buddha. It is from Buddhist teaching. So, it's paraphrased.
Okay.
When you experience an experience, it comes and goes. But when you resist an experience, it persists. And that just seems to be, like opposite. It shouldn't, you would think it wouldn't work that way. So.
Well, and
that's it.
That's you would think that. But when we look at it as we are living in an energy field, and there is one infinite source, one creative power that creates everything, that has created us, and we are coexisting in that field with everything else that exists. When we put our attention on something, whether it's something that we want or something that we don't want, that activates the law of attraction. And we begin to resonate with whatever it is that we're putting our attention on. So when something comes along and we don't like it, and we focus and we fixate on it, and that's what we're thinking about, then that's what we bring into our experience. And, we've seen examples of that when somebody is going to, when a kid is going to learn to ride their bike. If they're convinced that they're going to fall off their bike and skin their knee, it doesn't matter how much practice they get. It doesn't matter how long they go before they actually try riding their bike, they are going to fall over and skin their knee. And it's because that's all they're thinking about. That's what they're bringing into their experience. And we say, oh, well, those are kids. They don't have any sophistication. And we have sophistication as adults because we can pretend that doesn't happen. It still does.
Yeah, I hear that. We're just so far removed from it, from the logic of it or illogic of it. We forget. I do. Because when I read this, and I've read it before, sometimes I run into stuff again and I'm thinking, well, I forgot. Mm-hmm. But when you experience something, it comes and goes. So it's like flow. If you just allow something to happen in your life and flow with it, it implies that it will just pass through. But it doesn't indicate that it's going to pass through quicker. It will pass through probably with a greater level of peace. But, I think
stuff is going to happen. And stuff that activates us sticks around with us. Our energy resonates with it, and it has much more of an impact than if it just happened. Somebody who gets onto their bike and they got no particularly concern about it, and something happens and they fall off their bike and they skin their knee. It's like, oh, dang, I fell off my bike. That was so unusual. And they get back on and they continue riding because they don't think anything about it. They haven't attached anything. It's not, oh my God, I fell off the bike. That's always what's going to happen. I'm just the person who falls off the bike and get all hysterical. And I've had that experience. One of the things that I enjoy doing from time to time is mountain biking, which involves the risk of falling off the bike, which I don't like. But when I do it, for the most part, I get back on the bike. Sometimes I limp back home and nurse my wounds and then get back on the bike.
So about this resist an experience. If you resist, it persists.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? Break that down for us.
Okay. So when we're resisting something, it's because we don't like it. Because in our world of preference, it's not something that we would normally favor having in our experience. And when I explain this, you're going to say, oh, okay, you've been talking about this for 150-something episodes. And it's when we're looking at the problem and we focus on the problem, then what we're going to be experiencing is our life in relation to that problem. And the magical thing that we get to do as part of a practical prayer or part of this spiritual practice is pivot. I'm looking at this, I'm considering this is something that I don't like. The question is not, what do I do about this thing I don't like? The question is, what do I want instead? What's the experience that I want to have instead? Because if we're focused on the problem, what we're going to be experiencing is life in terms and in the frame of the problem. And once we let go of that and change our frame so that we're basically looking in the direction of what we do want, then everything that happens is going to bring that more clearly into our experience.
It seems so simple.
It seems so simple, and every time it comes along, it trips us up. It's like, oh, drat, I did it again.
Yeah, but it seems simple. I think the hard part is to remember, because my mind is, I'm shuffling through some experiences over the last couple of years, and I'm thinking of times when I said, wait, hold on, and practice the principle, and it works. The thing about it is when you have a problem, it's so, maybe because we're used to dealing with the problem or problems, we give it attention. And then you said that we organize our life around the problem. That's absolutely true. Yeah, that's really true. So we have, now this is what I do. I'm not saying everybody should do this, but I try to work in advance, and I have stuff in my pocket when it's happening. So then I'll pull it out, and maybe it's a piece of music or a poem or, something that I understand will help me to take my focus away. And if it's a small thing, okay. But if it's a big thing, I got the big thing over here for the big stuff. And for the things I just need to deal with right now. So it works. I think part of it is being convinced that it works. Because it, like I said, it doesn't sound logical.
No, it doesn't. But then again, if something's going on and you're fixated on it, if you're looking at it, there's the sound of a car wreck a block away, and there's the tendency, to run down and see what happened, and watch what's going on. And there's a bigger picture that's going on. There are some people who were involved in this thing that was unexpected, and there's the possibility of there being some discomfort or tragedy going on. So if our response, instead of, oh, goody, let's go look at the car wreck, is to say, let's set the intention that love is unfolding. This is an opportunity for the people who have been involved in this to have an experience that's highest and best of love unfolding, and an opportunity for the first responders to do their job and have success. And the other things that would be helpful in a situation like that. When we turn our attention to that, it opens up a whole world of possibilities. And then instead of being part of the gawking gallery that's saying, oh, let's talk about the tragedy, we become part of the consciousness that's inviting a new experience, a higher and better and loftier experience for us and for everybody involved.
And you don't have to be present to do that, right? Because the mishap or whatever could happen down there, and you could drive 2 blocks away and pray like that, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's still, It seems so big because when I'm looking at the quote again, when you experience an experience, it comes and goes. And I thought about that also in terms of it doesn't have to come and go immediately, but your frame of mind determines how you feel and how you handle the time between it comes and goes.
Yep.
Some crap likes to linger.
Yeah, and there can be stuff that's lingering that's not about punishing us. There could be things that just have a natural evolution of time themselves that are going to come and go and flow, and they're going to flow in and they're going to flow out. And then the question is, how are we able to be present? And we're not going to pray for patience, but to be patient and to allow that unfolding to happen in a way that doesn't get us completely wrapped around the axle. Because it can. It is possible for things to unfold in a peaceful way.
Sure. I think one thing is, I'm not sure if this is a fact, but I look for purpose in the event or in the experience. Not so much does God have a purpose and this was designed for me. I don't do that because I don't know that I'm smart enough to know what God figured would work. I just look at what I think I'm getting out of it. What can I experience? What can I learn from this crappy experience? And I don't always need a confirmation, like a divine confirmation of it. I'm not very good with synchronicities, recognizing them. My husband is. He always does, and I miss him. I'm sure that, but I just miss him. But when I'm in an experience that's unpleasant, let's say, and I'll maybe as soon as I get in, I'm fishing around, what am I supposed to learn from this? And I usually think if I get the lesson, it'll hurry up and be over, but it may not. Just kind of thinking along the way. And when it's over, I'm somewhat satisfied. I'm trying not to be conclusive about this, but I'm a bit satisfied with what I think I learned from it. Stuff will come later probably, but I don't need to see 11:11 to feel good about what I just, do you know what I mean? What I went through.
Yeah, and
that's
it shows
why
up
I
in
don't
different
see
ways. It shows up in different ways for different people. And that's okay. Every once in a while, we'll be together with somebody and they're going through their stuff. And they'll be lamenting about what it is. And by the way, this is an interesting exercise to do. When somebody's complaining about the experience that they're having, and you gently say, well, what experience do you want to be having instead? The interesting part is how often people want to go back and talk about the problem some more. Sometimes it's like a magnet. They just keep on talking about that. And you say, well, if this got better, what would it look like? Well, I don't know if it could get better because, and then they reiterate everything that they've said before. And every once in a while,
you don't understand it.
Yeah. And, because, there's like, oh my God, look at me. I'm such a victim. This horrible thing is happening. Let's talk about how woeful I am so that we can have some compassion and sympathy and put some emotional energy into me. When in fact, that's not really what they want. That's what they want right now. What they'd like is a different experience of the whole thing. If we do that for somebody and they keep on pushing back against it and we're just present with them, you can't push somebody into pivoting, but you can be present with them and love them and encourage them and support them. To have them come back some period of time later, a day, a week, a month, a year, and reflect on how that situation had been so challenging, and now that it's resolved, they're really grateful for you just having been there with them. It wasn't about you, and it doesn't have to be about you, but we can always get something out of it. And, when you're looking for the synchronicity, it's not the clock saying 11:11 necessarily, although that can be fun. It's the recognition, oh, this meant something different to the other people who were involved in this than it did to me, and I can be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I enjoy hearing the stories and things that are meaningful to other people, like the synchronicity, 11:11, and other kinds that they talk about. And it's just really kind of sweet stories, because I don't get, like I said, I don't get them. I probably just don't notice them. I notice what I notice in my life, and I'm pretty okay with that. But it's kind of fascinating that we're all so very different, and we get our confirmation, so to speak. That's the word I use. We get our confirmations, our divine confirmations in different ways, and that's really, I think that's really neat.
Yeah,
so,
well, that's, the infinite does not have a one-size-fits-all. It is a one creation fits all, but we each get to have our own experience. Let's take a break and continue this intriguing conversation about what the Buddha might have meant. It's Reverend Bill letting you know that the Practical Prayer for Real Results class is now available on demand. That's right, you can take it at your own pace, anytime you want. All of the information is at bethelight.com. That's b-the-light.com. You know where to find that stuff. The class is 5 lessons, broken down into 18 modules, and you can take them at whatever pace is comfortable for you. As you work through the process, it starts out with the theory, goes into the practice, there are experiential activities and exercises, and at the end of the program, you will wind up with an understanding of how practical prayer works, and a practical prayer for yourself that will work to create transformation in your life. And as you know, it works for everything. Take a look at the class online at bethelight.com. There's a sample lesson so you can see how the class is going to work for you, and then dive in. The great news is it's on sale now. You can register and save $20 off of the regular price. I'm looking forward to seeing you in class.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Mill. What after that again?
Yeah, what's it with you and my name?
I don't know. I
just try the name again really slow.
Reverend, I got this allergy thing going on here. I'm sorry. This is so Reverend Dr. Bill Marcioni. How's that?
That's great.
Okay.
That's great. And we're talking about experiences coming and going, and when we resist them, they persist. And the discussion has been that when we are focused on something, that is what shows up front and center in our experience, because that's where we're aiming our lens. That's where we're putting the focus, the intention or attention in our experience, and it tends to magnify it. So when we examine something, it tends to get bigger. And the way to deal with that is to pivot. Now, an interesting exercise to do, and I'm going to suggest this for everybody who's listening now, is to just pivot continuously. Whenever anything happens, you don't have to have a personal stake in it. Just look at something that's going on and saying, is this the experience I'd prefer? And would I prefer to have something different? And it's not like you have to be miserable because it's not a particular way. It's what it is. It's what it is. I was, walking the dog the other day, and I'm noticing that the houses a street over have lovely gardens filled with irises, and they're also filled with thistle. So the weeds are growing better than the irises are now. And I can look at that and say, oh, that's sad. So, and personally, would I prefer to not have the thistle there? I really don't have any interest in what's going on over there. It's an observation. But I can say, yes, I would rather have this be a healthy and lush garden. And just know that that's going on for me, and see what the energy is that I have with it, and see something else that, might be a problem. They've been doing utility work on the street, so everything is uneven, it's bumpy, and it's unfilled. Would I prefer to have the streets be repaved? Yeah, and they will. And again, I don't have a huge amount of energy in that. And sometimes something happens where it's like, all right, well, now that pissed me off. And the same question, what experience would I like to have instead? And see what's going on with my energy. Because if we only do it when it seems like an emergency, then that's the only framework that we'll have is, when there's an emergency, I can go through this process, and it's a break glass, pull red handle sort of a situation. It doesn't just have to be that way. We can do it all the time and get the feeling of that nuance. What does it feel like to pivot from what we're observing or experiencing now to what we'd like to have instead? And then the second piece of it is to continue pivoting and turn our attention to that infinite creative power that creates everything. Okay, this is the divine showing up in this particular way, and so is the way that I would prefer to have it. And then with that awareness of this is what is, this is what could be, and this is the power that's creating all of it, see how that feels.
I 100% agree with that. I was thinking of an experience that I had in the last couple of weeks. I hang out at the ocean, and it can take me 20 minutes, I suppose, to get there. And then there's a lake close by that takes less than 10 minutes to get to if I pick up salad and stuff to go there. And for some reason, I thought, it'd be nice to have another lake. And there is something a little further away. And I thought, I want to do something different. Like, I've been into this, try something different. No matter what you're doing, just do it a different way, just to practice the idea of noticing difference and relating to the movement of flow in a different way. And there's another lake. You're not going to believe this. Like, it's always been there, and I never saw it. That was so crazy. And to tell you how close this is, you would not believe it. It's not like it's off the beaten path. Well, it's a little bit off, but a mile.
Well, obviously you didn't go past it in all those years that you've been living there.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, it just has a couple of things in front of it. Like there's a police station and there's a bank or something like that. And I know that's there, and I never paid attention to it. But I don't know what made us just go, well, there's a Starbucks, right? And we went, for some reason, unless you have a reason for going, making, or off the road, drive into the driveway, you will miss it. But it's 1.3 miles from where I live. It's got a great walking trail. And the other thing is, this is so crazy, it's got a dog park. Now, I love dogs. I don't have one, but I love going to the dog park.
No,
and that's what happened.
Over there.
Yeah, it was just great. So all because I said, I think I like a different scene. Just variety, because sometimes I'm on a time crunch and I can't get to where I want to get to. This one is really good. And so now when we go out, my husband will say, well, which one you want to go to? Before we didn't have, it was wonderful, but we didn't think about choice.
Yeah, right. Now you have to make it into a discussion. So I'm relating this to the Christmas story about the three wise men being guided by the Starbucks in the East.
You are going to so get blasted. I'm telling you.
Times change, but only a little bit. There's certain things that I'm okay to say from my pulpit that other people can't say from theirs. So,
absolutely better not.
Okay. Is it blasphemy? I speak in love, or at least in humor.
It's cool with me, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the activity of pivoting, instead of saying I don't like going to the ocean and I don't like driving all the way to the beach there, when you open yourself up to a new possibility, well, I'd like to have something different. And then bam, there it is, even though it's already been there. And it's not like you need to be punished or coerced. It's like when we open ourselves to new possibility, that infinite creative power that creates everything can say, oh, I got this.
Yeah. It's you got to practice.
Yep.
Make something up and see how it works. Not if it works, but how it works. Is that fair?
Yeah. That's absolutely fair. And the illusion that we're in control is also pretty powerful. So it's gardening season now, and I actually got the garden in shape, and I am growing tomatoes and zucchini. And for the zucchini, I had enough time that I bought some seeds, and I've planted the seeds, and it's going to be another week or so before the little sproutlings come up and start auditioning for their space in the garden. For tomatoes, I was too late to get the tomatoes started, so I bought actual tomato plants. And it seems like, oh, well, the zucchini I can start from a seed, but the tomatoes I had to have help. And the fact of the matter is, I cannot create a zucchini or a tomato unless I start with another zucchini or another tomato. We're not doing this from scratch. It's my garden. It's going to wind up being my tomato plant, my zucchini plant, but it is that one infinite creative power that creates life that is creating it. And I am simply putting a little bit of an influence, my own local spin onto it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the same way everything works.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I can see an argument or a resistance from different sides of that, but that's absolutely how it works. Because if you don't get the seed, or the tomato plant, you're getting nothing.
Oh yeah, I have the garden I had last year, which is the garden of Bupkis. There was nothing in there. Well, we grew some lovely weeds. They were like 6 feet tall.
Really?
If I'd been going through for weeds, I would have been a successful farmer.
I just, so as a recovering control freak, I do from time to time remind myself that you are not doing this, or you're not responsible for making this happen. You're not responsible for making it happen. Now, remember, you can't make it happen anyway. You could just do your best, plant your best seed, and, do the best activity. But I feel like sometimes I have an advantage by being a recovering control freak, because it's that moment that I stop and think and make the decision as to, and I really, I know this sounds crazy, but I really delight in those moments, because it's praying that, and I know I'm doing a better thing than I have been in the past. Yeah. And
and that by definition is the pivot. When you go from the experience that you've been having, which is being the control freak and needing to be able to decide this is what's going to happen, this is how I'm going to muscle this into position, and realizing I'm not doing that. I'm doing this new process now. That's the pivot. And it can happen on an individual case-by-case basis, or it can happen, recovering control freak. That was a badge that you wore with honor for decades. And then when you finally took it off, it's like there's been a pivot, and you've been living in that pivot for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. And it's nicer because, especially when you think that you have a relationship with God, we grow in our relationship with spirit, or with our higher self, or however you wish to define it. I think we're always growing in that, the strength of that, and the largeness of it. But it's at moments that you stop, those stop sign moments that you wait and assess what's going on around you and what is going to be my next step. It's not going to be the one I normally would take, because that comes up automatically. Mm-hmm. Even with the experience of the level of success that I may have had before, it could be better, right? I think, I think I'd rather, choose something better, Because even though we are able to do things, it doesn't mean we feel as good about it, which takes
and
us
it can show up in all sorts of different ways. It could be that the result shows up and it's a better result than we've gotten before, or it could be that it's the same result and it's much less effort or struggle on our behalf, or it could be that it's the same result and it happens a lot more quickly, or it's less costly, or everybody else is happy. There's so many different possibilities of how it can be better, even if it's not that the result itself is better.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to be left out. So control freak is one term. I have a really good friend that absolutely hates that term, but so you can use the term perfectionist. It's the same thing because, you're doing that. But I like things to be better. So if the last time that I did this or encountered this, maybe even as good as I think I might have been at it, it could have been better, right? If I wasn't as stressed, it could have even been better. Or if I had invited the intervention of others, welcomed other people into the project, it could have been better. So it's all around. It works in so many different ways to our advantage, I think. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Yeah.
We're going to take another break. First, I want to ask you, the friend of yours who has this huge objection to perfectionist or control freak, is said friend a perfectionist or control freak in your observation?
Of course.
Learn to put practical prayer to work in your life. The steps are simple to learn and let you begin to get real results to create the life of your dreams immediately. Reverend Bill Marcione's widely acclaimed book, Practical Prayer for Real Results, gives you a clear summary of the New Thought principles behind practical prayer and the series of easy-to-understand steps found in the most effective prayers from religions and spiritual practices all over the world and throughout history. Practical prayer is not a replacement for your religion or practice. It's a technique to make the work you do in consciousness even more effective. The book includes 40 prayers on various topics that you can adapt as needed and use as your own. Practical Prayer for Real Results is available in paperback, Kindle, and audiobook on Amazon or at b-the-light.com. That's b-the-light.com.
Welcome back to the Practical Prayer Podcast. I'm Carol, here with Reverend Dr. Bill Marcione, and got it right that time.
I cut you off a little bit because you had a story about your control freak perfectionist friend who doesn't like the term control freak or perfectionist.
No, she doesn't. And because I have she sees me as abandoning excellence. And, and what's that thing? People are so concerned that you're you're condemning yourself. You're not appreciating your goodness. The word escapes me right now. And I'm thinking, it has nothing to do with that, right? I'll tell her, listen, I'm wonderful, honey. I'm still wonderful. I am still absolutely fabulous. Don't worry about it. But God is greater. And I'm just opening an opportunity for better. There's good, better, and best. Let me see if it could be better than the best that I thought.
Mm-hmm. There's so many possibilities. Yeah, and that's a great point, and actually inspires me for what the prayer is going to be about today. When we think we know what the best can possibly be, then we are putting a limitation on how good it could possibly get, because the limitation is something that we've set. We live in an infinite universe, so the good is impossibly bigger than the best that we can possibly imagine, because we're just using previous experience.
Yes.
We don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? Life is happening so quickly that the thing happens and it was good. It was really good. It was really good. And you're on to the next thing. But maybe if you had a little bit more time or take a little bit more time, you see how it would be better. I just kind of like doing that.
Okay.
Well,
yeah. We've been talking about when we are having an experience, we flow through it. And when we resist something, it persists, and how the pivot comes into that. So we're going to tie all of that together. And the prayer today is going to be for allowing. And allowing is the space that we get ourselves into where we are not resisting. We are not pushing away whatever it is that we're having judgment about. And we can be in the experience. When we are allowing ourselves to be in the ebb and the flow of experience, then it's possible for that infinite creative power to create something just spectacular. So that's what we're inviting in. So we can close our eyes, we can take a breath, we can do whatever it is that we do to turn away from the details in the world around us. It is so easy to have an opinion and a judgment and a thought and a notion and a critique and an evaluation and a scorecard. Do you get the point? About whatever it is that's going on around us. It is so easy for us to point at something and think that we understand the totality of it. And when we acknowledge that there is one infinite creative power, one infinite intelligence, one divine creative source, that has the wherewithal, the substance, the energy, the intelligence, the love, the goodness to create everything in this manifest universe. Billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars and planets, and all of the life that exists on planet Earth and perhaps elsewhere. All of it, an expression of that one, not just an idea that it came up with to make something happen out there, but it is sharing itself as every aspect, every facet, every part of its creation. Everything is that infinite presence taking its own form. And it's not possible that everything is the entire universe except me and the 3 feet around me. Everything is that one power and presence. So, on behalf of each one within the sound of my voice, I am claiming and acknowledging and standing with the understanding that that divine power and presence is within. It is the center and circumference of everything that we are and everything that we experience. Any judgment or evaluation, any critique, criticism, preference that we have had up until now is simply that, a personal preference. And by putting down that personal preference, that judgment, that evaluation, that critique, and opening to something new and allowing that infinite power and presence to suggest something new, we are inviting something fabulous into life. We may know exactly what it is and recognize it immediately when it shows up. We may not have any idea at all about the good and more good that can fill our lives to the point where we can't remember anything other than that. That good is available to and through and for and as each of us. It doesn't show up wrapped in a bow and presented on a silver platter. It shows up as new experiences in life, as new opportunities that when we step into them, open to more and more and more of that goodness. So as we turn away from the controlled way of deciding what it is that we think ought to be happening, and allow that infinite creative power that indwells us to create something uplifting and rich and joyous and wonderful, and set our intention just on the tone and flavor of having joy and harmony, of love and happiness, of peace and prosperity, of health and vitality, of creativity and connectedness, of being engaged in this process of love unfolding, life and joy and happiness and harmony. As we open to that possibility, it shows up in these rich, new, and wonderful ways. And it's happening right now, and it's happening for each of us in our own way. There is not one magic formula that delivers the same bit of good for everybody. It is an infinite creative process that creates that good, that richness, that depth, that texture in a way that's unique to each one. And that's what's happening now. That's what's unfolding now for each one within the sound of my voice. That good is underway now. I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful for the good. I'm grateful for the willingness to let loose the attachments and the judgments, to open and to allow something new and wonderful. And I'm grateful for the wonderful newness that's already coming about. And so with gratitude for all of this good, gratitude for the awareness of this creative process, gratitude for the ability to speak this word and release it into that creative law, I do so. I let it go. I know it's so. And so it is.
The Practical Prayer Podcast with Reverend Bill Marcioni and Carol Lawrence is a production of BeTheLight.com.
be-the-light.com.
where you can find more information about practical prayer for real results.
Our theme is by Music of Wisdom. You can learn about the spiritual community of New Thought Philadelphia with daily guided meditations,
Weekly celebrations of spirit
and Reverend Bill's classes in practical spirituality
at newthoughtphilly.org.
This podcast is supported by listeners like you. We're grateful for your tax-deductible donation at newthoughtphilly.org or the link in the episode description.